Homies, welcome back. Immortal Empires is creeping closer every day, so continuing our breakdown of the changes coming in the combined campaign, Tuesday Newsday has brought us start positions, and there are some big surprises in this first batch. Covering the Empire and the 4 greater demons of Khorne, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle today, and I think we'll get started with the Mono Gods, because stranger things are a-brewin'. Yeah, it's a bit weird. Contrary to what many of us expected, including myself, all 4 avatars of the Chaos Gods move into fields far aflung, with Nakari to the Shrine of Khorne on Ulthuan. That was to be expected. Kairos to the Fortress of Dawn, Kugeth Plaguefather to the Dragon Isles, and Skarbrand to Death Gorge in the Badlands. Now, the Nakari situation, as we said, completely expected after data mining back in May. I personally like that location on Ulthuan for Slaanesh, as we've discussed. High Elf Archer spam, especially in siege scenarios, will be quite painful for the Dark Prince to deal with, but this changes what has traditionally been an insulated, prosperous, and quite frankly boring area of the map, and shakes it up quite a bit for the early game. Throws a bit of a wrench in the High Elf's plans to consolidate that donut. Now, I've heard what some of you have said about Nakari's AI just being outright deleted by the rest of the unified continent, and there may be something to that we'll discuss in a moment, but from what I understand, CA tends to buff certain factions and nerf others depending on who you're playing and who you're allied with, which is why military alliances can sometimes make a faction that was previously performing well before that alliance kind of anemic and useless afterwards. So my bet is that when playing any high elf faction on Ulthuan, the rest of the elf sub-factions will be worse, and Nakari or Scourge of Cain may even get some buffs as the AI to make it more likely that you'll have a smackdown with the Keeper of Secrets when playing as Tyrion, for example. Frankly, I think Ulthuan needed this change. On paper, it's a very interesting, thematic, and lore-friendly one, but as usual, it will all come down to the actual implementation, and it would not shock me if the first iteration leaves something or a lot to be desired. Only time will tell. As for the rest of the greater demons, the start positions came as a complete shock to me here, and I don't think any of these changes were on my radar in the slightest. I imagine most of us expected a handful of them to stay in the northern wastes, and the others to be moved to the southern wastes, and that was gonna be it. Now, there's some potential good, bad, and ugly with these changes, which again, will largely depend on actual implementation, but we haven't seen how it plays out in practice yet, so all we can do is speculate based on where they are on the map. From the standpoint of campaign diversity and variety, these changes look quite exciting. Should be a good deal more fun than some random corner of the Chaos Wastes. I personally don't really love the start position of any of the greater demons in the Realms of Chaos campaign, and we're already going to be replete with characters up in those areas of the map anyway, especially once more DLC and those Chaos reworks start rolling in. Don't think the Chaos Wastes are particularly exciting, interesting, nuanced, fun to play, what have you. Skarbrand, Nakari, Kugeth, all of them kinda meh in Realms of Chaos, so these changes are spicy, I should say. Kairos at the Southern Cape of the Southlands, wildly different experience than the Red Wastes north of the Great Bastion. Kugeth at Dragonfang Mount, would have never in a million years thought to move him there. I figured it'd be Nakai or Lokir's new home base. And Skarbrand fighting Greenskins in the Badlands, making war from Death Gorge. Weird. Mostly because there's no real lore reasoning to have any of these greater demons where they are now. This is purely a gameplay move to get more faction diversity to areas of the map and to populate what is already a sprawling combined campaign. As I've said before, don't have a problem with that approach at all. Gameplay comes before strict adherence to lore, but with that said, I can see some potential downsides here. And one of the biggest is that these iconic greater demons are now in very precarious positions. Positions from which they can pretty easily be destroyed in the early game. And unlike Beastmen or certain Horde factions, I don't believe they're programmed to return once their armies are obliterated and their final settlement taken, which could lead to some anticlimactic situations. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want Skarbrand getting wiped by Grimgore on turn 15, or vice versa, right? I don't want Kugeth jerking his fat chode on the Dragon Isles like Malice does in Warhammer 2, accomplishing absolutely nothing. I want those to be forces of nature, and while I don't want them to completely dominate the map every single time in every single playthrough, because naturally that will get boring, I still want them to make an impact wherever they are, and it can be underwhelming to have a greater demon and a mono god faction straight up get wiped before you ever even see them. When they were up in the Chaos Wastes, they were essentially unassailable. You could kill them once, twice, half dozen times, but their empire would remain intact, and they'd be back to try and murder you even into the late game because you could not kill off their empire. With these new start positions, although Kairos and Kugeth in particular are fairly well insulated and shouldn't have too much trouble establishing a foothold, I'm also not sure they're positioned well to do much of anything either. And if you're playing as an order race, especially in Game 3, I think you expect demons to do something. As for Skarbrand, he's in a Thunderdome, right? Like, he's going to be fighting Greenskins, Tomb Kings, Dwarfs, Lizardmen, Skaven. He's smack dab in the middle of the action. It should be a lot of fun playing as him, and arguably that's the most important element. But naturally, having a good place for the AI to make an impact is important too, and if there's no way for greater demons to come back after getting wiped by turn 12, that will be pretty lame. So what I'm hoping is that at least with the endgame scenarios we know are coming, the ones that focus on the Chaos Invasion, will resurrect these greater demons if they're already dead, and make them a true late game threat, replete with tier 5 units and all kinds of doom-stackable demons. Because unlike a Queek Headtaker, or Albrecht de Bordelot, just because you've killed Kairos or Kugeth once, doesn't mean they're dead, they're demons. And banishing them back to the warp once should not be all that's required to finish them off for good. Especially if you never even get to see them, because some random minor factions consistently beating their ass off screen. These are the big bads of the setting. We have waited a long time to finally get demons. I want demons to feel impactful wherever they possibly can. But yeah, even without the underway, Skarbrand should be super fun to play in Death Gorge now. I teleported there in my first Warhammer 3 campaign ever, and that constantly refreshing move range with him made you absolutely gobble up territory, even in mountainous areas, which are traditionally kind of a nightmare for factions to deal with if you don't have the underway stance. Plus, your units will straight up dookie on Greenskins, Tomb Kings, and Dwarfs early game, so should be fun to play for yourself. I just don't know how his AI will do surrounded by all that madness. Kairos and Kugeth are a bit more isolated. They'll probably have a more chill, turtly, and defensive start, and are definitely less likely to get wiped than Nakari and Skarbrand will be, purely based on geography and nearby potential threats. Once Ind and Koresh open up, Kugeth may end up having one of the most interesting and unique star positions in all of Immortal Empires. The Dragon Isles is going to be primo territory. You can pretty much go wherever the hell you want with Kugeth there. Right now, his eastern border going to be kind of boring because all that land isn't being used, but once that opens up, that should be a hell of a lot of fun. As for Daniel the Demon Prince, he will no longer be in the most garbage of all starting locations ever, Doomkeep in the heart of Norska. Trash, ass, disgusting, vomituous, makes me want to vomit every time I see it. I have not played that campaign again for a long time, partially because Realms of Chaos just isn't really where I want it to be, but also because, yeah, I mean, that star position is just not fun at all. Lorelorn, Nordland, constantly just raiding your coastline, playing whack-a-mole, it's just a terrible experience. Thankfully, that will not be a problem in Immortal Empires for him. He'll be further north in the Forest of Decay, smack dab in the middle of the Chaos Waste, and that should make him a much more attractive playthrough. So, let's shift our attention to the Empire. Nothing crazy happening with Franz, Gelt, or Wolfheart. It will be wonderful to see them again, but they are not the focus here because they're pretty much starting where they did in Game 2. There may be a region difference here or there, but functionally, I don't think any of their campaigns will play much differently in Game 3. They're not really even making use of the new mechanics like sea lanes either. They aren't really in a position to do so until later on. But that changes with Volkmer the Grimm, who is now out on crusade, and he has a whole new world to contend with now. Because he is down in the desert fighting Tic-Tac-Toe, the Necrotic Brotherhood, and of course, the Tomb Kings. He will begin his campaign in Sudenburg, the Imperial Penal Colony just south of Araby, hell-bent on finding certain dark artifacts. Definitely a hint at his campaign mechanics there, but I'm not sure if that means he's getting his own unique mechanic or that's being rolled into a search for artifacts that already exist in-game. Because, I mean, obviously, the Tomb Kings have their Books of Nagash. That mechanic is there and ready to be used, though presumably Volkmar, if he ever wanted to get his hands on those, would want to destroy them for containing heresy rather than use them for himself. He's not a corrupt bloke, but this could be an entirely new mechanic as well, with new dark artifacts of a different flavor, and if you guys have any ideas what those might be, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. In general, though, I'm not expecting anything crazy in terms of his racial mechanics. He'll be too far away to make use of the electric count system, but he's also one of like a couple dozen lords getting moved, so his rework is unlikely to be earth-shattering, although I do hope that he gets a little bit more of an updated skill tree and, of course, whatever this new mechanic is. But with that said, great to see him elsewhere, and automatically, I think he becomes the most exotic and interesting start location for an Empire Lord in the combined campaign. Cannot wait to see how he plays down there. Will probably be my first Empire campaign in quite a while. He and Rapunzel are going to have their work cut out for them in the Southlands for sure, as living, breathing humans in the land of the dead. So, some big surprises on the start location front. Curious what you all think of this first set of reveals, and over the next several weeks, we will be getting a much more complete picture on who is where and what each lord will be up to once Immortal Empires drops in August. Hope you all will be there to join me, and I'll see you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.